have to create that universe. We never had to build that computer. So the universe, the existence of the universe, technically, I guess under your definition, would exist contingently and not necessarily. Now, if you're going to take universe as to mean existence in general, encompassing everything, that is going to be a slightly different story. The fact is, I am not making a positive assertion in any way why there is something rather than nothing. I am stating that we can't really know why there is something rather than nothing. I think it's the most honest position to take. We're welcome to guess, of course, and philosophize about that, and I enjoy those things. I've made a video or two. Okay, I made a video on that topic. I don't think that we can state whether or not anything necessarily exists. I think we're giving ourselves far too much credit with our limited ability to understand the universe. Granted, it seems very incredible to us how much we understand, but given the vast majority of the information that's out there, I think we've still only uncovered we've barely grazed the surface. So that's why I assert that we can't really know. I've seen the Leibnizian, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that again, because I forget things, I forget pronunciations a little bit sooner than I should, but it kind of, I reject the premise because I feel as though it's attributing more emphasis on our ability to comprehend things than need be. Because we can comprehend something and comprehend a universe and understand whether it's necessity, I don't think we can state something is necessarily a part of existence, because we don't know what's outside of this universe. We can't really say. We have no ability to detect this. So I hope that answers your question. I did my best. I think I'll return I'll return your style of questioning with a similar one, going back to my second question as well. Now you stated that you don't think there's anything that God could have done to win more souls because, and correct me if I'm not clarifying your position as well as I should be. But hey, agnostic man, what's up? But basically, you asserted that there is sin in the world and that people are going to go to hell because of their sin. And you have no reason to believe that there's anything that God could have done to make that better. As well, it's not the belief in God that gets us into heaven. It's the acceptance of Him into our heart. Now, my actual question is, of the people that don't accept Jesus, do you think there are any that would believe it if they had absolute proof, if they believed He existed? Do you think that there are people out there that don't believe, that don't accept Jesus because, firstly, they don't even think about it because they don't think God exists? Do you think there's anyone ever that's existed like that and has died with that belief as well?
Well, I would be certainly glad to do a sort of double take on your question. With regards to your specific question, do I think that there was anyone who did not believe in God because they didn't have proof? I would say yes. There have been plenty of people who died not believing in God because they did not have enough evidence. But as I stated in my answer to your previous articulation of this question, I said that belief in God is not the same as entering into a saving relationship with God. And that is what God is concerned with. God, whether or not we believe in God is inconsequential for God Himself. What is consequential for God is whether we enter into a saving relationship. So, to answer your question one more time more concisely, yes, there are people who have died not believing in God because they did not have enough evidence, but I would doubt your statement that people have died without being in a saving relationship with God because they did not have enough evidence.
I hope Wildcard's keeping track. We're on the last question for each of us now, correct, Wildcard?
That is correct.
Well, for my last question, I would like to venture into the realm of history shortly. I would like to ask regarding your argument that miracles were much more prevalent in during the time of Jesus' day. I want to ask why that is entirely relevant when we consider the specific miracle that is in question. And the specific miracle that is in question is Jesus' resurrection from the dead, and that resurrection being an eschatological one taking place before the final resurrection of all the believers. Because it would seem that people were not very likely to believe in this particular miracle, because the historical evidence from John 11:24 pretty clearly supports this fact, and Jewish messianic expectations seem to support this fact. And finally, people during Jesus' time were just as aware that people who died stayed dead. So given these facts, I would like to know why the prevalence of miracle stories is relevant to my argument from the origin of the Christian faith.
Well, I think you, again, misunderstood my argument. My argument was that was in relation to you asserting that it was that you can't compare the rabbi that died in 1994 and the fact that there are still believers in his messianicship, if that's even a word, to this day, and believe, and they wait for his second coming. That you say that they were talking about back then. Not that there was other miracle stories around, but that miracles, supernatural events, were more believable back then, because back then a lightning bolt was supernatural. People didn't understand where lightning came from. Many people believed it was not angels bowling, but that's the popular kids analogy for today, but something along those lines. They saw what they didn't understand. Since we understood less back then, the belief in the supernatural was much more likely. In other words, when we are told of a if I were to tell you that I ran into the Kraken today, most likely you would probably not believe me, and whatever reasoning beyond the fact that you think that that's scientifically very unlikely that that's the case, that all of those other objections are relatively irrelevant. Only that today we have more of a awareness of the world. So back then, if I go there back then, certainly some people would think I'm crazy, but there might be some people that are more inclined to believe it, because back then they actually did believe in sea monsters. They did believe in these things that we know today are not true. We're not even talking about Christianity. We know there's no gods on Mount Olympus, at least as far as we can tell. So back then it was much more likely to believe in things. So the fact that today there is a person that died, people saw him die, and there was no even there's not even any story that he was bodily resurrected or spiritually resurrected. He just died, and people still think he's the Messiah. In today's world of mass communication, imagine what it would be like if back then, for someone in which word of mouth was the only form of communication beyond writings, which most people couldn't even read anyway. So the majority of that was word of mouth. I think it's very plausible that you would have a deity. Not a deity. But you would have a guy who people believed, who was possibly